My name is Isabella Hartley. I'm 32 years old, and what I'm about to tell you isn't a story I ever imagined sharing with the world. It's about inheritance, yes, but mostly it's about betrayal and secrets people thought would stay buried forever. If you've ever felt pushed aside by someone in your own family, this might hit close to home. Before we dive in, if stories like these make you feel seen, go ahead and like this video and subscribe. You never know, one day it might help you see through someone else's mask too. I stood at the back of the church, my black dress clinging to my skin like guilt. The kind of guilt you can't name but still feel crawling across your bones. I hadn't cried yet. Not because I wasn't grieving, but because the grief hadn't found a way out. It sat in my throat like a stone. My grandmother, Eleanor Hartley, had just died at 83. 83 years of being a force of nature. She was sharp until the very end. Her voice, her judgment, even her handwriting looked like it could slap you across the face. She never needed a cane or a walker. Her stare did the job. It could paralyze a grown man. I'd seen it happen at family dinners. The church was only half full. A few neighbors, some bridge club friends, and a handful of relatives who looked more relieved than bereaved. The pews creaked under their shifting weight, not from sorrow but from impatience. Nobody seemed truly devastated. Nobody except maybe me. And yet, my Aunt Victoria sat front and center like the whole thing was just another meeting she had to endure. Perfect posture, hands folded neatly in her lap, dry-eyed, not even pretending to dab at a tear. Her outfit was flawless. Black Chanel suit, pearl earrings, heels that didn't dare click on the marble floor. Everything about her screamed, "I'm in control." I watched her closely as the priest read the eulogy I had offered to help write, but that she insisted on revising herself. My version had heart. Hers was sterile, sanitized. She'd cut out the story about Grandma patching up stray dogs in the backyard, or the way she used to hum Sinatra while pruning roses. To Victoria, those weren't relevant. What mattered were Grandma's charitable donations and her influence in the community. Even in death, Eleanor Hartley was being rebranded. After the service, the guests floated out like smoke, barely whispering. Condolences, no tears, no long embraces, just cold hands and colder nods. I lingered. I didn't want to go to the reception Victoria had organized at the family home, where finger foods would be served in silence and no one would speak her name. I approached Victoria outside under the gray sky. She was talking to a man I didn't recognize, probably some estate attorney or wealth manager. She gave him a firm handshake like they'd just closed a deal. Then she turned to me, her smile tight like a wound trying to scab. I moved in to hug her, mostly out of reflex, and she let me. But it wasn't mutual. Her arms hovered around me, her chin barely touched my shoulder. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "She loved you so much." She leaned in and whispered, "I'm handling everything. You don't need to worry about anything." And just like that, the cold hit me deeper than the wind. Something in her tone, that silky calmness she used when she wanted to let you know she had the upper hand. No warmth, no inclusion, just dismissal. And that's when I started to worry, because when someone tells you not to worry, it's usually a warning disguised as comfort. Victoria always wanted control of the family, of the narrative, of Eleanor's legacy. And now, it was all hers to rewrite. But what she didn't know was that I had questions, and I wasn't going to stay quiet. Not this time. 2 weeks after the funeral, I found myself in the sleek, wood-paneled office of Mr. DeWitt, my grandmother's lawyer. The man looked like he hadn't aged a day since I was a teenager. Same gray three-piece suit, same steel-rimmed glasses, Same habit of pushing his pen exactly parallel to his blotter. Precise. Predictable. That's why I didn't expect anything to go wrong. I sat in one of the stiff leather chairs across from his desk, my hands clenched in my lap. Aunt Victoria sat to my left, legs crossed, calm as ever, flipping through her phone until he cleared his throat. "This won't take long," he said, unfolding a thick envelope. His voice was neutral, dry as paper. "This is the most recent will and testament of Eleanor Hartley, dated 3 months ago. 3 months ago." That made me blink. The last time I had spoken to Grandma about the will was barely 2 months ago, and she had been clear. She'd said, "One day, I want you to have the cottage. You understand the land. You won't try to turn it into a weekend Airbnb or pave the orchard. You get it." That cottage wasn't just sentimental. It sat on 3 acres of land she'd tended herself. It was where she taught me to plant tulips, to make marmalade, to listen to things that don't speak, wind, trees, animals. It was the only place that felt like home after my parents divorced. So when the lawyer started reading, I waited for my name. Page 1, nothing. Page 2, still nothing. By page 3, my stomach had started to tighten, like it knew something I didn't. And when he reached the final clause, the line was as cold and clean as a guillotine. All assets, properties, and financial accounts are to be transferred solely to Victoria Ann Hartley. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just heard the words echo in my skull like a gunshot in an empty room. No cottage, no land, no mention, nothing. I looked up at Mr. DeWitt. He didn't meet my eyes, just folded the will and set it down like a judge delivering a sentence. And Victoria? She didn't flinch. She just tucked her phone into her bag, looked at me, and smiled. That smile. It wasn't wide or gloating. It was controlled, practiced, the kind of smile people use when cameras are rolling. I stood up slowly. My legs felt numb. "There must be some mistake," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "My grandmother told me, not even 2 months ago, that I was in the will, that I was getting the cottage." Victoria stood too, placing a hand on my arm, soft and heavy at once. "Isabella," she said, lowering her voice to something syrupy, "the will was updated. We all have to respect her wishes." Her thumb pressed lightly into the inside of my elbow, like she was grounding me, or warning me. I pulled back. "Updated. When?" I asked, staring at Mr. DeWitt. He cleared his throat again. "According to the documents, this version was signed and notarized on March 14th, in my office." "But she didn't tell me," I said. "She never mentioned anything. That doesn't make sense." Victoria smoothed her hair behind her ear and let out a breath through her nose like she was tired of being the adult in the room. "She probably didn't want to upset you," she said gently. "She must have realized her priorities had changed. These things happen." No, they don't just happen. This wasn't a woman who changed her mind easily. She'd fought off developers for years to keep that land intact. She'd spent every summer with me on that property, walking barefoot in the dirt. She made promises, and she kept them. But suddenly, without warning, I'd been erased. That wasn't just grief in Victoria's voice. It wasn't concern. It was relief. And that smile, that wasn't sorrow. It was victory. In that moment, I knew something was wrong with this will, and I wasn't going to let it go. The meeting had barely ended when Lauren found me. She moved through the hallway of the law office like a shadow, quick, silent, jittery. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a too-tight ponytail, and she kept glancing over her shoulder like someone might yank her away before she could speak. "Isabella," she whispered, grabbing my arm. "Come here, now." We ducked into the stairwell, the heavy fire door thudding shut behind us. It smelled like old paint and nerves. Lauren's face was pale, like she hadn't slept in days. Maybe she hadn't. "I think she changed the will," she said, voice trembling. I blinked. "Who? Grandma?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "Victoria." My chest tightened. Lauren looked me dead in the eye. I heard her. A few days before the funeral, she was on the phone in the guesty room at my mom's house. She thought I was outside, but I'd come back in for my charger. I only caught part of the call, but she said something about getting it signed and notarized fast, and she sounded stressed. Not sad, not grieving, just focused, like she was finalizing a business deal. I felt like the floor tilted under my feet. "Are you sure?" I asked, gripping the railing. Lauren bit her lip. "I wish I wasn't. I wanted to believe she was just handling the estate stuff, you know. But then, Grandma passed 2 days later, and suddenly, this new will appears, and you're not even in it? That doesn't feel like Eleanor. You were her favorite. Everyone knew that." The words hit harder than I expected. I hadn't thought of myself as the favorite. I just thought I understood Grandma better than most. But hearing Lauren say it out loud, it made what happened today feel even more sinister. "Do you have anything else?" I asked, voice low. She shook her head. "No, just what I heard. I didn't record it or anything. I didn't even think it was important at the time, but now it mattered more than anything." I thanked her and walked out into the cold late afternoon, my thoughts spinning. My heels clicked against the sidewalk as I passed black windows reflecting my own confusion back at me. There was no doubt anymore. Victoria had orchestrated something. The only question was how far she had gone to cover it up. That night, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove out to the cottage, Grandma's cottage. It was a long drive down winding roads, the kind that lose cell reception halfway through. But I knew every turn, every tree. I'd been coming here since I was 5. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the house looked untouched, like it was still waiting for her. The porch light was off, but the motion sensor clicked on as I approached. I reached into my purse, fingers brushing against metal until I felt it, the old brass key. I hesitated for a second, then slid it into the lock. It turned. That alone made my heart twist. If Victoria had really taken everything, why hadn't she changed the locks? Inside, the air was musty with disuse, but everything else was the same. The knitted blankets still, draped over the reading chair, the stack of seed catalogs on the kitchen table. Her teacup, washed and turned upside down in the drying rack, like she might be back tomorrow. I walked from room to room, slowly, like the house itself might whisper secrets if I listened long enough. Then, in the study, I noticed it. One of the desk drawers was cracked open, just slightly. Grandma never left drawers open. She hated clutter, hated things being half done. I pulled it open all the way. Inside, everything was neat. Pens lined up in a wooden tray, a pair of reading glasses, a stack of old utility bills. But wedged between 2 envelopes was a small, folded sheet of paper. I almost missed it. I took it out. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but it was in her handwriting, and the first line stopped me cold. "If Victoria finds this, she'll destroy it." The attic door was hidden behind a faded tapestry in the upstairs hallway. Most people wouldn't have noticed it. But I remembered. Grandma used to keep it that way on purpose. She didn't like people going up there. I pulled the cord, and the stairs creaked down like a sigh from the house itself. Dust bloomed into the air as I climbed. The attic smelled like cedar and regret, that dry, aged scent of secrets kept too long. The single bulb overhead flickered as I turned it on, casting long shadows across the wooden floorboards. Everything up here felt untouched by time. A dollhouse. A broken rocking chair. Trunks lined up like coffins, each one padlocked and labeled in Grandma's spidery script. One of them said simply, "To be burned." I hesitated before opening it. The lock was already broken, cleanly snapped, not rusted. Someone had opened this before. Inside were dozens of letters, not typed, not printed, handwritten, on thick, cream-colored stationery, the kind Eleanor always used. I recognized the curling loops of her L's, the strict slanted rhythm of her handwriting. I'd seen her write grocery lists with that same intensity. These weren't just old notes or cards. They were confessions, letters she'd never sent. The first one I read started bluntly. "If something happens to me, Victoria should not be trusted with the land. She's lied before. I only wish I had the courage to say it out loud." My hands started shaking. Another read, "The documents she asked me to sign. I didn't understand them. She said they were just for property taxes, but I don't trust her. Not anymore." And another, "Isabella understands this place. She doesn't want to sell it. She loves the trees, the pond, the quiet. She sees things like I do." Every single one was signed. Eleanor Hartley, dozens of them. Some dated just weeks before her death, others from years ago. Letters never mailed, never handed to anyone, tucked away in a box meant for flames. I sat back on my heels, the letters spread around me like a paper graveyard. My mind was spinning. Why didn't she tell anyone? Why write all these, pour her heart out, and then hide? Them in a box labeled for destruction? What was she afraid of? Victoria? That was the obvious answer. But afraid in what way? My aunt had always been cold, calculating, but dangerous. Something didn't add up. There was one more envelope, sealed, marked only with my name, Isabella, if I can't say this aloud. I didn't open it yet. I wasn't ready, not emotionally, not logically, not until I understood more. Because something about all this felt wrong in a way I couldn't yet name. It was like walking into a crime scene a year too late. The clues were here, but someone had cleaned up most of the blood. I didn't expect to find a clue on a refrigerator door, but there it was. A magnet shaped like a sunflower, slightly chipped, holding up a faded business card. Monica Diaz, in-home care professional. A number. A tiny heart drawn in the corner, in blue pen. I remembered her. Quiet, always respectful. She used to braid Grandma's hair on Thursday nights. What was her number still doing here? I stared at it for a full minute before grabbing my phone. She answered on the third ring. "Hello? Hi, Monica. It's Isabella Hartley, Eleanor's granddaughter." A pause. Then her voice softened. Oh my goodness. I was just thinking about her yesterday. I'm so sorry for your loss." I asked if she could meet me, somewhere neutral, somewhere private. We agreed on a diner just off Highway 9, the kind with sun-cracked booths and waitresses who called everyone hun. When I arrived, she was already there, hair pulled back, in a tight bun, fidgeting with her water glass. She looked up and gave a nervous smile. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said quietly. "But I'm glad you called. We talked a bit, small things, but I could tell she was holding something in." Her eyes kept flicking to the door, to the windows, like she was expecting someone to interrupt us. Finally, I leaned in. "Monica, I need to ask, did anything strange happen right before Grandma passed?" She exhaled slowly. Her fingers tightened around her straw. "Your aunt, Victoria. She came the night before Eleanor died," she said. "Unannounced, around 9 p.m. I froze. What did she want? She said she just wanted to talk to Eleanor, family stuff. But then she asked me to leave early, said she'd stay the night and take care of her. I blinked. That wasn't normal, was it? Monica shook her head. No, not at all. Your grandma wasn't in crisis. She was stable. I wasn't supposed to leave until midnight. My throat tightened. And when you came back, her eyes locked onto mine. The blue folder was gone. I didn't understand. What blue folder? She looked around, lowered her voice. Your grandmother had a folder, navy blue with a red ribbon. She kept it in the kitchen drawer near the phone. A week earlier, she asked me to sit with her and a man named Simon. He was a lawyer, not the usual one. She said she didn't trust the family firm anymore. I could barely breathe. She rewrote the will? She didn't say it out loud, but I watched her sign something. 2 copies. I signed as a witness. She seemed relieved afterward. Said she finally did. What was right? My hands were trembling. And Victoria knew about this? I think so, Monica whispered. When I came back the next day, Eleanor was gone. And so was the folder. No sign of Simon either. Your aunt just said everything's been handled. I felt my stomach turn. It clicked. Victoria had destroyed it. She got rid of the second will. Silenced the only people who could confirm its existence. But she missed something. Me and Monica, and maybe whoever this Simon was. I stood up and slid a 20 under my cup. Monica, would you be willing to say that in writing? In case I need to challenge something legally? She hesitated. I don't want trouble, but I'll tell the truth if I'm asked. Eleanor was a good woman. That was enough. For now. As I walked out into the parking lot, the night air felt sharper, clearer. Victoria thought she buried everything, but the truth has a way of seeping back through the cracks. There's something no one tells you about digging up family secrets. Once you start, you can't stop, even when you wish you could. After my meeting with Monica, I barely slept. I kept turning everything over in my mind. Why would Grandma make such a drastic change at the end? Why bring in a new lawyer, secretly? Why the urgency? The only answer that made sense was this. She was scared of her own daughter. So I started looking into Victoria's past, not the version polished for garden, club luncheons or local charity galas, the version she buried, and that meant going offline. The deeper, older records weren't indexed by Google. I drove to the county courthouse in the neighboring district, where Grandma used to live before she built the cottage. I spent an afternoon going through microfiche, old scanned PDFs, anything that still bore the Hartley name. And then, I found it. It was small. A line item in a court docket from 2002. Hartley, Victoria, charged with fraudulent transfer of property. My heart stuttered. I requested the full case file, and after an hour of waiting under flickering fluorescent lights, a clerk brought me a manila folder yellowed with age and water damage. Inside was everything. Victoria had used forged signatures to transfer ownership of a parcel of land that technically belonged to her then-ill aunt, a woman who passed away months after the fraudulent sale. The family swept it under the rug, but someone filed a complaint. The case went public for a few weeks, and then settled out of court. No conviction, just silence. Money exchanged, reputation preserved. It all made sense. That's why Grandma grew cold toward her around that time. Why Victoria started volunteering with legal aid groups and cleaning up her image. She had done it before, and Eleanor knew she could do it again. She wasn't just trying to protect an old cottage. She was trying to protect her legacy from her own daughter. But Victoria did what she always did. She buried it, just like she buried the second will. Just like she buried Eleanor's letters and any shred of truth that contradicted the version she wanted the world to believe, until I dug it up. I took a photo of the court record, sent a copy to my email, printed another, and in that moment, sitting in a courthouse chair with cracked vinyl, I felt something strange. Not anger, not even satisfaction. Resolve. This wasn't just about a piece of property anymore. It was about the principle that people like Victoria don't get to win just because they think they're the smartest person in the room. My grandmother trusted me with the land because she believed I would protect it. And now, I finally understood what that meant. I wasn't just fighting for a cottage. I was fighting for the truth she was too afraid to say out loud, and I wasn't done yet. I didn't sleep the night before, not because I was afraid. Those days were over. Because I knew what I was about to do would change everything. And there's no unringing a bell once it sounded in front of everyone who ever mattered to. Your name. I called it a memorial lunch. Simple, respectable, non-threatening, enough to draw in the entire Hartley clan. My cousin Lauren came, still clutching the uneasy guilt of knowing too much and saying too little. Monica, the nurse, agreed to be there too, though she sat near the back, sunglasses perched in her hair like a shield. And of course, Victoria arrived in full armor. Black dress, pearls, an artificial calm that smelled like fresh manipulation. She kissed my cheek like we hadn't spent the last month in silent warfare. "I'm glad you're doing this," she whispered. "It's what your grandmother would have wanted." "Oh, Victoria, you have no idea." I kept the energy soft at first, offering coffee, showing old pictures of Grandma on the projector, feeding the chickens, pruning her roses, sipping tea on the porch. People smiled. Some wiped away tears. Then I said, "I found something in the attic, things Grandma left behind." And the room went still. I dimmed the lights. First, the letters, projected one by one onto the screen, Eleanor's shaky handwriting. "If something happens to me, Victoria should not be trusted with the land." I wish I had the courage to say it out loud. Silence. Victoria shifted in her seat, her smile now brittle. Then I said, "There's more," and played the audio recording. Monica's voice clear as crystal. "Your aunt came the night before your grandma passed, made me leave early. When I came back, the blue folder was gone. She told me not to trust the family lawyer, that she was changing the will." I watched Victoria like a hawk. She blinked once, twice. Her throat moved, swallowing something that tasted a lot like panic. I stepped forward, holding up a piece of paper. The court record is public. From 2002, Victoria Hartley was charged with property fraud. Settled out of court. I read every word out loud, line by line. No drama, just facts. By the time I finished, the room had changed. No one looked at Victoria the same way. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "This is slander," she spat, her voice cracking under the pressure. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice. I just looked her in the eyes and said, "Tell it to the judge." The silence that followed was the kind that sticks to your ribs. Nobody defended her. Not even her own sister. Victoria stormed out, heels clicking on hardwood like a gavel slamming shut. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because for the first time, they knew. They all knew. And now it wasn't just my word against hers. It was Eleanor's voice finally heard, through letters, recordings, memories, and through me. The family lawyer didn't speak for a long time. He sat at his desk, fingers steepled under his chin, staring at the copy of the will that had handed everything to Victoria like it was gospel. But now we both knew better. "I've handled Eleanor's affairs for nearly 20 years, he finally said. "And that signature? It's wrong. I can feel it." Feelings weren't enough, though. Not when the stakes were this high. So we brought in a forensic handwriting expert. Someone with no ties to the family, no skin in the game. They compared the signature on the updated will to more than a dozen verified letters and legal documents from Eleanor over the past decade. Their report was blunt. This signature is not authentic. It is a deliberate forgery. Everything unraveled after that. We filed a civil suit to dispute the will and restore the original terms. Victoria, of course, countersued, claiming defamation and harassment. But then came the blow she hadn't seen coming. Monica's testimony, the recording, the letters, the court record from 2002. They weren't just family drama anymore. They became evidence. When the DA caught wind of it, they reopened the old file. Fraud, forgery, coercion of a vulnerable elder. Victoria's legal team panicked. Within a week, she dropped the countersuit and signed a settlement agreement to avoid criminal charges. She disappeared not long after. No apology, no explanation. Just vanished into some condo in Florida, according to Lauren. And the cottage? It's mine now. Legally, officially, quietly. But I don't go there to celebrate. There's no champagne on the porch, no social media posts, just me and the hum of the wind through Eleanor's old wind chimes. I go there to pull weeds, to fix broken shutters, to feed the robins she once called her little scouts. I go there to remember the woman who tried, to protect what mattered, even when her own daughter turned on her. I often wonder what would have happened if I hadn't listened to my gut. If I had let Victoria's smile convince me everything was fine. But I didn't. Because something inside me, maybe something I got from Eleanor, refused to accept a lie wrapped in silk. Now, every time I unlock the door, I pause, just for a second. And I whisper low and steady, I didn't let her win, Grandma. And somehow in that silence, I swear I can feel her there, still watching, still proud.